CIB, I had no flag, and I had no combat pass. So life was pretty miserable for me as a private. And to be honest with you, I wanted to quit, man. I was getting smoked every day. I had squad leaders that would show up drunk at 3 in the morning and put me in the lean and rest, make me do push-ups while they read chapters of Ayn Rand to me. I wanted my own platoon in the infantry, and that was the achievement that I wanted to get to. I didn't think I was going to be a very good senior non-commissioned officer in a different MOS that I didn't know. So I chose the med board process, which took about 18 months. My wife at the time, I had asked her to give me 18 months to figure some shit out. And, I admitted I failed. I couldn't figure it out. It wasn't working. So I gave her the option, like, hey, we can go anywhere you want to go. It's your turn to pick. 18. I was 18.
Oh, so you were young.
Yeah, I came back from my first deployment. I had to wait 6 months before I could drink a beer.
Welcome to Veterans Corner. I'm George Hinestrosa, an Air Force and Army retired veteran of 25 years and digital marketing agency business owner. Here on the show, we explore how military experience transforms into business success. Each episode features veterans who've built thriving businesses, sharing strategies that turn military training into entrepreneurial advantage. The mission is to inspire and equip transitioning service members with practical knowledge and real-world insights from veterans who've built their businesses in many different industries. And I'm happy to introduce today Adam Peters. Welcome to Veterans Corner, Adam.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Great, man, great. What if the same person who spent 13 years as an Army infantry soldier would later become Chief AI Officer at a cutting-edge tech company while building one of America's most impactful veteran communities? That's exactly the extraordinary journey of today's guest. Meet Adam Peters, a man who embodies the rare combination of battlefield discipline and entrepreneurial vision. After 13 years in the Army, Adam didn't just transition to civilian life. He transformed it entirely. He is the founder of The Strategic Veteran, a podcast and community platform that's become a lifeline for thousands of veterans navigating post-service life. But here's where it gets fascinating. While building his veteran advocacy empire, Adam simultaneously ascended to Chief AI Officer at All Set Technologies, literally shaping the future of artificial intelligence in enterprise settings, from military trenches to AI innovation frontlines. Through the Strategic Veteran podcast, Adam has interviewed dozens of successful veteran entrepreneurs, providing actual roadmaps for reclaiming purpose after service. He's created The Stronghold, a paid community becoming a national movement, offering veterans genuine brotherhood, practical guidance, and a path forward. What makes Adam's story truly compelling isn't just professional success. It's his raw honesty about the journey. He's been open about post-service identity struggles, exploration of alternative healing methods, including plant medicine, and his commitment to addressing veteran mental health from the roots up. Here's someone bridging worlds that rarely intersect: military discipline and AI innovation, veteran advocacy and corporate leadership, traditional success metrics, and holistic healing approaches. He's not just building businesses, he's building bridges for an entire generation of veterans. Adam, I'm thrilled to have you, man, on the show. And just before we get into the entrepreneurial part of things, let's get into the mindset of the young Adam before the service. What compelled you? What was boiling up inside of you as a young man wanting to join the service? What made you join the service? What branch of the service did you join? And just guide us through a little bit of those first steps.
Yeah, man. So I was compelled to join. So I joined in 2002 as a junior in high school. Spent a year on delayed entry. The reason I did that is because I was on the wrestling team, the football team, the track team, all that good stuff, like most of us probably were. But I had a buddy that was a class ahead of me who had gone to basic training between his junior and senior year, and I saw the changes that had made in him as a wrestler. Not that he was a bad wrestler before, but I was able to see his resilience, his discipline, his work ethic, and all of that on the other side side. So originally I joined trying to do the same thing, missed it by a day. I also joined because the recruiter sold me hook, line, and sinker on, back then, joining the Army as an infantry guy, you could expect to be PCSed every 2 or 3 years. And, I grew up in small town Indiana. There's not a lot there for me. And I knew the world was a big place. So I have a travel bug, and I really wanted to travel the world. Hindsight's 2020. That's not how my career shook out. I ended up with 2 duty stations and 4 deployments, 3 to Iraq, 1 to Afghanistan. So I didn't get to see the world that I thought I was going to see.
Yeah.
But that's the real reason, man. I just knew there was a bigger world than small town Indiana.
Yeah, that's wonderful, man. Wonderful. So tell us a little bit about your kind of like your primary role in the Army, and maybe just a couple of the hiccups you may have had, and maybe just a couple of the highlights in your in your Army experience. What kind of how did Adam translate from the young man coming in, and how did your mind start to evolve when you were already in the uniform?
That's a good question, man. I tell people a lot, based on who I am now versus who I was when I joined, the military and throughout my career. I was a very mediocre soldier. I could have done a lot better. I joined really because it was a way out of small town Indiana, so I didn't really have any expectations. I did join on an 11 X-ray airborne ranger contract. That paperwork got messed up. So when I graduated basic training, I didn't even really have a duty station. I had 2 options. It was wait a day for the senior drill sergeant to find a place for me to go, or stay as permanent party at Echo 258 until they could rectify all the paperwork. Basic training was kind of a joke for me because I was in shape, and so I thought it was easy, but I also didn't really resonate with I had seen how they treated the other permanent party guy. I thought I was going to be treated like this terrible private, like they had treated me in basic training. Hindsight's 2020. I should have stayed because I would have got to go to all the schools and probably had a better career. But then I got to the 3rd ID about 2 weeks after they came home from the invasion of Iraq. So life for me as a private was pretty miserable, particularly as an infantry guy. Back then, you were in the Army, so you may remember this, and I don't know what came first for you, Army or Air Force, but we were still in BDUs, and back then, in order to wear a flag on your left shoulder, you had to have a combat patch, and so I didn't have one of 3 things that I needed to really be respected as an infantry guy. I had no EIB, CIB, I had no flag, and I had no combat patch, so life was pretty miserable for me as a private, and to be honest with you, I wanted to quit, man. I was getting smoked every day. I had squad leaders that would show up drunk at 3 a.m. and put me in the lean and rest, make me do push-ups while they read chapters of Ayn Rand to me. I remember the cleaning parties in the barracks where literally, they would make us take everything out of the barracks down 3 flights of stairs, organize it downstairs, spray a hose and mop and clean everything floor to ceiling, and then haul it all back upstairs. Then I started to deploy. So about 10 months after I got to my first duty station, I deployed for the first time, and everything changed. I did the first deployment, came back on the parade field, had orders for the second deployment, and pretty quickly realized this is going to be my life. So it was really just learning how to be an effective combat soldier.
How old were you at that point? At that point when you actually started to deploy? I mean, how many years? I mean, you said
18.
10 months.
I was 18.
Oh, so you were still young.
Yeah, I came back from my first deployment. I had to wait 6 months before I could drink a beer.
Wow.
So I was really young, and like I said, man, I just quickly realized that that was going to be my career. I mean, the patch chart was a thing. You could go actively look at it if you could find a computer and see who was on the patch chart. So you kind of knew what deployments were going to look like. So really, my career became go to the field, train, deploy, come home, take a little bit of leave, and do the whole process all over again.
Wow. So after you got back from, you said 2 deployments?
I did 4 total.
Four deployments total.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, you coming back. What was your mindset at the end of your 4th deployment? And when you were 18, all those smoke sessions that you had, and how did you look back on that by the time you got back from your last deployment?
I started to understand kind of the purpose behind it. It was to build the mental resiliency and kind of put you in a suck that you can't really replicate stateside, right? Like, deployments are a different monster. My fourth deployment to Afghanistan, anybody who's been to Iraq and Afghanistan and has that experience, it's a completely different fight. And so, having done 3 deployments to Iraq before I did the Afghanistan deployment, also doing the Afghanistan deployment as a senior, staff sergeant in the Army is a lot different than when you're coming up through the ranks. And so, the Afghanistan deployment far overshadowed the Iraq deployments because I experienced in Iraq, I experienced kind of the open ROE. Anybody on a cell phone, anybody out after curfew, anybody on a motorcycle is dead, no questions asked. To no up armor on Humvees, to then the second deployment really being out west where not a lot of things are happening. You're just doing counter IED operations and supporting. We fell into the Marines at the time, so supporting Marines.
Right.
Not a lot of firefights happening in that deployment. To the third deployment, basically being a QRF out of FOB Constitution, which is the ING side of Baghdad, still living like shit, but really being seeing all of those things change. To then jumping back into my deployment was to Panjwai, Afghanistan, which for those who don't know is the birthplace of the Taliban. And so while I was there in 2012, we were the most active with SIGACs in all of Afghanistan at the time. So it was just a completely different fight. And as a senior leader, now you've got a lot of guys to worry about. And I was also the TOC in COIC at that time because I was still kind of recovering from an injury on the third deployment. And so I learned a lot about war and a lot about, had I stayed in, a lot of things that would have helped me see the bigger picture and kind of progress my career along. So it was an education, man. I think every deployment was an education to my career and kind of, segued into the next part of my career.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful, man. Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing how, everyone is, and I tell everyone that I interview, like, we all have different thresholds for pain, right? And a lot of that basic training, all those mind games that we think, is this really necessary? It's really for our own good, right?
Yeah.
And it's, because we don't know, like you said, a deployment is a totally different monster depending where you're going to go, right? So yeah, so that's beautiful insight. So now you've come back from your last deployment. How long after your last deployment did it take for you to get out? And talk to us a little bit about your thoughts on the transition. Were you going to retire? You're not going to retire? I want to get out now because I've got these ideas. What was going through your mind before you even began transitioning? How did you start developing the next step?
Yeah, so I was a career guy. I was going to go 22. So coming back from Afghanistan, I had torn my shoulder, my left shoulder, and I had to have surgery. And through a lot of things, my own stupidity, my own drive to get back in the fight, yada, yada, but also just kind of the way the medical system was set up in the Army at the time. I didn't have proper recovery. I ended up tearing my shoulder again. And when I went back and saw the surgeon, he was like, "That's it, you're done." He's like, "I can't fix this. You can't be an infantry guy anymore." And at the time, I was about to come on the list to make E7. They did give me the option to reclass, but I was kind of a guy like, I've got almost 13 years invested as an infantryman about to be an E7. I'm still going to make E7, but you want me to go to a whole new MOS. And now I'm expected to be the subject matter expert in that MOS. So I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. Those are the leaders that I despise. Like, what
Right.
value am I bringing to the young soldiers that are going to be looking to me for guidance? And also being in a place in my career, like E7's all I ever wanted to make. I wanted my own platoon in the infantry, and that was the achievement that I wanted to get to. I didn't think I was going to be a very good senior non-commissioned officer in a different MOS that I didn't know. So I chose the med board process, which took about 18 months. And I drank that time away, man. I'm just like everybody else. I drowned my sorrows in the end of my career, struggled with what am I going to do now. I followed the TAP plan to a T, go to school, get a degree. you'll get a six-figure job. Congratulations, you're successful. None of that is real. That's not how that works. So I made a lot of mistakes, man. A lot of mistakes. In fact, it took me 8.5 years from November 2nd, 2015, when I medically retired, to when I would come out of that I call it the transition hole, and actually start making smart decisions and driving my life in the direction that I wanted it to go.
All right. So I'm assuming now you're in your early 30s, correct?
When I got out,
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
when you were getting ready to get out.
I was 30 when I got out. So
Right.
from
So you were
17 to 30, I was in the Army,
right.
and
So yeah. So 13 years. So now, when Adam is getting out, what's going through your mind? Or did you have a plan? What was the convulsion going on in the mind? Because this is where we want to focus on here. We want to really drive in, because we all go through that. Or whether you have a family, don't have a family, we all have that. Okay, now what? What am I going to do? Right?
that's
And
exactly
obviously you
it.
didn't want to get out. So
Yeah, I was very much in the what the fuck am I going to do now? I'll never forget the day I picked up my DD-214 and my retirement certificate. I got back to my apartment. It was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We should be going back to formation after lunch. You know what I mean? Like, day goes on, and I'm not. I'm just kind of lost. I didn't have a plan. You got to remember, I joined the Army to avoid going to college. I was not a great student. I just don't, it's not that I wasn't a good student or I couldn't learn. I just, sitting in a classroom 8 hours a day is not for me. So college was naturally not an option for me. So, like, what do I have going for me? I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm good at beyond kicking in doors and shooting people in the face, right? Like, that's what we do as infantry guys. Like, it's in the description, to close with and destroy the enemy. Like, that doesn't translate well to a resume, or so I thought at the
yeah.
time. So for me, it was really kind of acquiescing to, like, how do I make money? Well, it seems like I should probably go to college and get a degree and live off the BAH money from the post 9/11 GI Bill. At least that gives me 4 years of runway to figure out, like, where is my place in the world. So I almost resigned myself to the fact that I was going to go to underwater welding school and become a pipe fitter. That's what I was going to do with my GI Bill, until I found out that I could go to flight school. I had tried to become a warrant officer twice when I was in the Army through PRK. They told me to kick rocks, basically, because I wore glasses and the technology wasn't there to change my eyesight to get me to where I needed to be. So when I found out I could go to flight school, I was all in on that. So my first 2 years, that's what I did. I went from private to commercial, and I got a degree, an Associates of Applied Science and Technology in Professional Pilot from Clover Park Technical College. So I am a commercially licensed pilot. I can fly for money if I would keep up on certifications and currency and all of that. And in my career in aviation, I knew I wanted to fly private jets, and I wanted to do that internationally. So kind of the next logical step to make yourself competitive is to go finish out and get a bachelor's degree. So that's what I did. I used the rest of my GI Bill and voc rehab to go get to extend that AAST into a bachelor's in business and psychology from a choose your own adventure school, which was a lot of fun. And in some ways, I think it was harder than going to a traditional college. And then on the other side of that, that's where everything kind of fell apart.
Wow. Wow. So take us a little bit through that. So what, after that then, so what was now you have a challenge, right? Now you're into another challenge. So what's your mindset? Okay, we're walking through these mental gymnastics, right? So what was your next mental challenge?
Yeah, so I finished the bachelor's in 2020 at the height of COVID. So I didn't even get to graduate, like, on a stage or get a diploma handed. They mailed it to me.
Hmm.
There's a couple of things that I needed to do in order to have a career in aviation, but I lived in Washington State at the time, and they had shut down all flight training because of close proximity with an instructor and all of that. And they had done it. They were shut down till late 2022, so 2 years I was going to have to wait to pursue a career and advance my career in aviation. So on voc rehab, one of the cool benefits when you graduate is they give you 3 extra months of BAH while you're looking for a career. And so I had applied to, there's stipulations that come with that. You have to be applying to jobs. So long story short, I ended up in the insurance industry and left Washington State and moved all the way across the country to knock doors selling final expense, which is just whole life policies to seniors. And I got sold on that hook, line, and sinker because, yes, life insurance is a very lucrative business, but they didn't tell me kind of the behind the scenes things that I need to know. They didn't teach me about chargebacks. They didn't teach me how to massage a book of business, how to build a book of business. They just wanted me to sell, 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 sell. And by the way, I was financing, the driving around and the hotel stays that you had to have. They were just providing leads. So very much an eat what you kill scenario. And I was going broke fast because the business I was writing was not staying on the books, and nobody was teaching me how to keep business on the books and actually massage a book of business. From there, I pivoted because I was going broke to work from home health insurance sales. That was a pretty good gig, not nearly as lucrative, but I was having success at it. Things were staying on the books. But they turned my lead money off for 10 days. And that'll kill your momentum in a sales job like that. So then I printed my resume off and drove around to all the big box property and casualty insurance stores in my town. Walked away with 4 job offers, chose to go to an all-state agency, and ultimately some promises were made that weren't delivered on, so I resigned from that job, and that's the last corporate job I ever had. That's kind of when I made the decision that I was never going to work for anybody again, and really started looking into digital entrepreneurship, the digital nomad lifestyle, seeing how I could build an income stream online, and really started diving into all of that.
Wow, Adam. So that's a lot of gymnastics there. So you're what ages are you right now? At what ages were you going through these last 3? Because you just talked about 3 different professions. You just went through pilot to to this to the insurance to.
Yeah, so I would have finished.
How many years went by during that time?
So yeah, getting the degrees, becoming a commercial pilot, and getting the business and psychology degree, that was 4 years. So I was 34. Went out at 35 to do the insurance thing, and by 39 I was leaving corporate America. So, and I just turned 40 this year. So really didn't start the entrepreneurial journey until right before I turned 39.
Hmm. So can we deduce that, because that's not an easy path you took there, right? You from salesman, insurance salesman, pilot, becoming my dad was a private pilot, so I understand what goes into that. And because I was a young kid, but I would go up with him every time he went up with the instructor and sit in the back of the Cessna and all that. But that's a lot of mental gymnastics you're going through there. So what prompted you then? So at this point, are you in turmoil? Are you like you still? This is not, you're not feeling it, right? You're not. Each one of these professions is not you. It's not Adam Peters, right? It's not.
Right.
It's not flowing. You're doing it because you had to do something, right? And you had to come up with things on the fly and whatever sounded good at the moment or whatever option you had at the moment. So what was the internal kind of dialogue?
Yeah, that's a really good question, man. So aviation was my dream. I mean, from the time I was a little kid, I had National Geographic used to have these little fold-outs that you could put in a 3-ring binder, and I had like every airplane known to man just lining my walls. I've always been fascinated with flight. I can remember one of my earliest memories is being taken to the airfield there in Evansville, Indiana. There was a B-17 there, which is my favorite airplane. I got to tour the B-17, and then some generous donor had paid a lot of money for like a 30-minute flight that all the kids that had come to this air show to go up in this B-17, right? So I loved that airplane, knew I wanted to fly, and then kind of got discouraged my whole life through that because I wear glasses. Originally tried to join the Navy and the Air Force because that's where you go when you want to fly, and they just laughed at me like, that's not ever going to happen, buddy. So in flight school, I really got dejected because nobody tells you what flight school is actually like. Like here I am thinking, I'm going to learn how to take off and land and, navigate point A to point B in the sky. Really what it is it's 200 hours of tooling around in a box in the sky they call the practice area and doing the same 15 maneuvers over and over and over and over again. And so and I'm a big guy too, man. So, spending 200 hours by yourself in a little Cessna crammed in there with no air conditioning and in the heat, it's not fun. So I started to burn out that way. And then realizing, at my age, right? So, I mean, even after you graduate flight school, you need to get another 1,250 hours before you can even think about becoming like an airline pilot or anything like that. So there's a couple of ways you can do that. You can go and fly up in Alaska on some of the Part 91 stuff, or you can be an instructor, or you can fly what they call like low time jobs, which is diver drivers or pipeline patrol. But so many of those low time jobs are dependent on who you know. And I don't know anybody in the industry. I think you can agree to this because your dad was a pilot. So you have firsthand experience with all of this stuff. Yeah. I also pretty quickly realized that at my age, it's a very nepotism-based industry, right? So, fathers get their sons and daughters into it when they're very young. So they're getting private pilot's licenses at 16. They're building hours so that by the time they turn 21, they're going straight to the airlines. Then they get a seniority number, and a seniority number, it's directly linked to how much money you will make in that career. And so my seniority number was going to be so low that I was never going to reach the pinnacle of, income that was possible at Delta Airlines or an American Airlines or whatever. So I started to see that too. And honestly, man, it just kind of took all the joy out of flying for me out of it. Like, a lot of people don't know this, but at the airlines, you really don't have any responsibility other than taking off and landing the airplane. Your routes are planned for you. Your fuel's calculated for you. It's kind of why I was more apt to go to the private route because, I get to choose the routes. I have to stock the private airplane with the snacks that the client wants. I have to make sure we have enough fuel. I have to pick the diversions, all that stuff. I like that aspect of it, right? Being involved, having a little bit of responsibility, right. And just, learning things about what it is to be on reserve and how you're going to be treated for the first couple of years. Like that was taking all the fun out of it for me. So then going to the insurance industry, man, I was just grasping at straws. I heard you could make a lot of money and you could make a lot of money really quick. And I was like, well, I like money and I want to make money fast. I just didn't realize at what cost, and I hated it, man. I'm trying to sell an intangible product to uneducated people in a financial space that they're not going to benefit from. Only their family is, because it's a death benefit, and they can't afford it anyway. So it was sucking the soul out of me, man. I just hated it.
So I don't mean to laugh, man. Because I've lived that. I've had insurance salesmen and come to me and I can relate to everything you're saying.
It's terrible.
So can we say, Adam? Can we say that that your infantry training and your experiences in the Army helped you push through all that humdrum that you experienced during those 4 professions that you blew through, right? Because I mean, they like you say, it sucked some of the life out of you, but you had to push through that because all of those required a mental focus. To become a pilot, you have to have mental focus. To become a salesman, you've got to sell. You've got to have that focus, right? So everything required a focus, and you have this internal thing going on. Can we say that the military background maybe helped you push through that?
Without question. In fact, I mean, we can take it even further. I think because of the military background and trying all of those things, I learned a lot of valuable skills that helped me do what I do now, right? Like ultimately become an entrepreneur and apply all of those things. Because here's the deal. You need sales when you're an entrepreneur. You need adaptability and being able to be flexible because nothing ever goes as planned. You need to experiment and learn all of these things, right? Like learning how to learn through flight school because, man, I'm telling you, you know as well as I do, flying is not as simple as point A to point B, just get in the airplane, take it off and land it. Like it's so much studying. There's so much you have to know on a very, very deep level, right? Instruments.
Flying.
It's so hard. Yeah. Aerodynamics, the visual illusions that you're going to experience because they're all real. And, aviation above everything is about safety. right? So I think all of those contributed to where I'm at now, and I wouldn't be where I'm at now had I not gone through that. So
That's
yeah, I think that's a fair statement.
That's excellent. That's excellent. And that's, that's kind of like where we want to be. Because people that are listening, right, to the audience, um, we all go through that. We all go through those challenges. We all go, and we all somehow manage to blow and to, get by and to push through these obstacles. It's just important to stay focused. Don't ever let yourself get down because you're having to do something. Just take as much as you can, give it your all, and just be confident that you're going to get through it and something better is on the way, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. All right, man. So let's get into, you getting out now. You're getting out of the army. I'm fascinated by your journey because it defies conventional wisdom, right? So most people pick one lane, stay in it, right? Like I'm going to get another government job and I'll be cush for the rest of my life or whatever. I've got a security clearance or whatever. But you managed to excel in AI technology while building a veteran advocacy empire, right? So, all while exploring alternative healing and, consciousness work. I mean, now we're getting into ethereal things, we're
Yeah.
getting into more, mindsets here.
Yeah.
So all of these things are coming together because, like you said, all of these things kind of help shape, who you are now and how you were able to now not only do one thing, you're doing three, four things at once and able to juggle and be successful, right?
Yeah.
Stay focused. You're using time wisely, right? You're no wasting time. You're focused. You're giving a little bit of your energy towards everything. So the mind, we're talking about the mind here. Tell us a little bit about the mind journey now that you're involved in these things.
Yeah, so after I left that last insurance gig with Allstate, my wife at the time, I had asked her to give me 18 months to figure some shit out. And, I admitted I failed. I couldn't figure it out. It wasn't working. So I gave her the option, like, hey, we can go anywhere you want to go. It's your turn to pick. She chose to come here to Florida. I had decided that I was going to go finish CFI and go back to aviation as a career, just because. Let's be honest. I mean, aviation is still very lucrative. It's not a bad career, and like I would have been working like 14 or 15 days a month for quite a bit of money, right? Like, so it's not a bad life. So I had picked up one of the easiest jobs I've ever had in my entire life. I had to wait for some stuff to come back from the FAA to submit some numbers, and this is my absolute rock bottom story, so it's all relevant. But
Okay.
while I was in the sod farm. Waiting on those numbers, I ended up tearing my bicep tendon a week before I was supposed to take the check ride to become a CFI and finish that whole thing out. That's relevant because it was in my left arm, and the CFI check ride's done in the right seat, which means I'd have to work the throttle with my left arm. You can't do that when it's in a fixed position. So that was like rock bottom for me. Now, while I was in the sod farm, I had discovered and been introduced to plant medicine and was kind of becoming interested in it, mainly because I knew pills from the VA weren't the way for me. I'd watched so many of my buddies become shells of the people that they had once been, and they were still trying to kill themselves. So I'm at the end of my rope. Nothing is working out for me. I genuinely am thinking about killing myself or committing suicide or however you want to talk. So many of us go through this. I'm just apt to talk about it because I think it's relevant and it can change people's lives. So I reached out to all of the nonprofits that I could find that would sponsor veterans to go to a plant medicine retreat. And that's how I ended up with Heroic Hearts Project at La Medicina in Peru. And that's what really changed my life. That week-long ayahuasca retreat changed my life. So I don't even know how to explain what it did for me, but it flipped this switch, and that's when I started all of the things that I'm doing now, right? So the first thing I did was came back and started taking care of myself, started exercising, started losing weight, started being mindful, started practicing meditation, breath work, mindfulness, yoga. From there, I was challenged to get on LinkedIn and start developing kind of a brand and a personal brand, if you will. I had no clue what I was doing. I started just like everybody else does, throwing shit at a wall, seeing what would stick. through that process, I would meet people. People would want meetings with me. I would get invited to different communities and masterminds where I would get more information on what direction I should take things. Eventually culminated in saying, "Hey, you're a veteran. Veterans have a lot of problems. Maybe you could be, an advocate for some of these problems." And started the podcast. The podcast, developed into advocating for better transition because that's a huge problem. They're not setting us up for success on the way out. That podcast started creating opportunities for me. It got me some nonprofit work, which was a volunteer basis where I got to learn a ton. Got me invited to do some different presentations on my philosophies in front of veteran skill bridge groups, and it just kind of started to snowball. It got me the recognition because, when you start a business, you either have time or money to invest, and a lot of us don't have money to invest. So we have to invest our time. So I started learning AI and automations as they became more mainstream and popular and kind of at the front and center. Early guest on my podcast, which is my co-founder or my CEO, Tyler, had been watching me after I had him on the podcast and actually reached out to me and asked me if I would help him build the AI company for equity. And so just started teaching myself things to take things off of my plate and fell in love with all of it. And then in January of this year, the people that facilitated my first ayahuasca journey reached out to me. They had gone out on their own and started their own retreat for a lot of reasons that we won't go into here, but it's much better than the one that I had gone to at first, and asked me if I would be the veteran coordinator to lead veterans to this transformational experience down in Peru. And so that's it, man. That's the long and the short of it. Is you just,
That's wonderful.
I got out there, I put myself out there, not knowing what I was doing, and gathered a bunch of information and feedback and implemented that feedback to then turn it into everything that I have going on now.
So what are some of the, as we wind down, and again, we don't want to, and thank you for sharing all that. I mean, this is exactly what we're trying to do here is let people know that, hey, man, we're all going through some rough stuff, right? And you're not alone. You're not alone, and you can reach out to any one of us. You can reach out to Adam. You can reach out to me. Anyone who hears this at any time, and even the people that are being interviewed on these podcasts, those links are there. Reach out to us, right? Veterans are here. We are a community of people that we can depend on each other, and this is exactly what we need to get across. And so, as we wind down, Adam, here, what are some of the things that, in retrospect, hindsight, however we, 2020, however we want to say it, what are some of the things, 2 or 3 things that if you only had 5 minutes or 10 minutes to share with a group of veterans, I mean, what are some of the key things from the heart that you would want them to realize, if not to know, because it takes a little time to know something, but to at least to understand about life and about the trajectory that you might think you're going on, but sometimes it's an illusion, right? I don't know if it's in Think and Grow Rich or one of those books. It says that 80% of the things that we fear never come to pass, right?
Yeah.
Or higher, like 90%, right? It's like things that we machinate in our minds as if I don't do this, and those things are just illusions based on how we were brought up, based on how we've been programmed, right? So what are some of the things that 2 or 3 things that you, from the heart, right, that you might want to share with as we close?
Yeah, first and foremost, as you're getting out, take the time to do the uncomfortable thing and sit with yourself in the mirror and ask yourself what you want. Ask yourself who you are. How do you define success? What do you want out of life? Because that'll really help nail down your true identity, not the identity that the military has created for you or that you're hung up in, which leads into the second part. Once you do that, you'll be able to tune out what I call the noise. I think that as veterans, we are pushed into society's box, from our parents to our spouses to our kids. We don't listen to what we want. We listen to what everybody else thinks we should be doing. And I definitely don't agree with that at all. I think my experience has shown me that when I listen to myself and start moving in a direction that aligns with my unique journey or blueprint or whatever you want to call it, all of those other things with all those other people in my life start to fall into place where they should. I don't have to give them energy because I'm giving the energy to myself to move myself in the direction that resonates with me. And I think the third thing would be, man, trust yourself. Really believe in yourself, because I know for me, I didn't believe in myself until after that ayahuasca experience. I didn't trust myself. I didn't think that I was capable of a lot of things. I listened to all those outside influences, and it shaped my internal belief system about myself. I think a lot of people can relate to this. You're probably stuck in a job or a career or maybe even a business that just makes you feel off. It gives you this disgusting feeling in your stomach, like I should be doing something else. This doesn't resonate with me. And that's because you were listening to all those other people instead of yourself. So you are more than capable of doing this. You can create literally anything out of nothing. I'm living proof of that. I've created 3 things, or been in a part of 3 things, 3 main companies that really speak to me. They're things that I spend a lot of time, whether I'm working or not, learning about AI, learning about plant medicine, and I am a veteran who wants better for our community on the other side. So, I just kind of took stock of all the things that I was spending time on outside of quote unquote work. And I think you can do those same things. You can turn your hobbies into income producing streams of revenue. Like, you don't need to just do things in a traditional sense. And I would encourage people to take inventory of what are you spending your free time on? Are you scrolling TikTok, Instagram, Reels, whatever that looks like? What does that content look like? Because that's a pretty good indicator of an area that you could find a ton of joy in building a business around, or a side hustle that produces income.
Right. Thank you, man. Yeah, beautiful. And what I'd like to do, Adam, if it's okay, and I'll say it here in front of the audience, is that I'd like to maybe have you back on the show so we can talk a little bit more about one of those things, right? One of those things that a little bit more in depth. Doesn't have to be as long. Could be 15 minutes or so, but just something so that people can, oh wow, maybe I need some meditation. Maybe I need some transition myself to. Was working out really important to get into meditation? Should I never have walked away from working out after I got out of the service?
Yes, the answer to that is yes.
Right, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, right. And how much am I drinking? How am I eating? I'm going back into the health thing. You're talking about all these health, and related with plant life, and so all of this is interrelated. Our spirituality, I think, is actually related to all of these, right? The less we do of the bad things, the more spiritual actually we become.
Yes. I would love to come back and talk about that, because there's 5 main things that I like to tell people. There's 5 areas you need to get right in order to have a successful transition. And we had a MEPS to go in, if you remember, Military Entry Processing Station.
Yep.
This is not, I can't take credit for coming up with this. This goes to Matthew Banco, who has the Acknowledge to Action podcast. He just retired from the Air Force. He says there needs to be a MEPS to get out, and there's 5 categories in that: mental, emotional, physical, social, and spiritual. And it's still the acronym MEPS with 2 S's. And you've just touched on all of those things. I'd be happy to come back and talk about all of those things.
Great. I love it, because I think we have lots in common, right? We have lots in common, and I think this is the start of a nice relationship. Well, Adam, thank you for your time. Again, to everyone that's listening, we'll put all the links and the tags for Adam in the bottom of the video once it's published. Thank you again, Adam, for being with us. Thank you, veterans. Thank you all for your services. Remember, we're all here to help each other, all right? This is a community of veterans. We are not alone, all right? Thank you, Adam. God bless you.
Thank you so much.